What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be looking at MSTR, Bitcoin, different indicators, and different charts. So we are still here at this golden zone. This golden zone is that same one that we've always been talking about to the bearish side. Anything coming to this zone would more than likely be rejected. We found that rejection and we finally have broken out of it. And now it looks like we're potentially retesting it. We'll see if we end up closing back inside of this zone and then having to fight through it again, or if we can actually get the bounce that we've been hoping for. We still have a day and 19 hours left, so we still have 2 trading days left. We'll see where MSTR takes us here. Overall, the structure is bullish. We had a large move, sideways consolidation, kind of like a bull flag. Then we had a breakout, but the breakout kind of lost steam after the first 3 weeks. I do wonder if, I don't know if we're going to come back to get another retest off of this, because maybe this retest wasn't enough. We'll see. And also, when you take a look here on the fib, we were talking about this in the prior videos. We were talking about the 382 and the possibility of us touching the 0.5 to the 618, the golden zone. We always talk about golden zones on this channel because they happen to be a magnet for price. As you can see, it landed perfectly on the 0.5. So hopefully we get a bounce from here. And we also get a bounce off of this major golden zone here. So we have 2 things in confluence. We are getting closer to this downward sloping trend line that would act as support as well with the upward sloping trend line. So we do have a lot of things in confluence along with SMAs, which we'll go over in a second. So we have a lot of things that are potentially going to hold price up. Of course, there are plenty of things that go into determining where MSTR's price goes. We did see that aggressive sell-off, which I would imagine was ATM, because whenever you see this kind of price action and Bitcoin didn't make a significant drop, it's typically due to the ATM issuance on the common shares. So that's usually when you'll see these random engulfing candles to the downside. In comparison, when you measure MSTR, the drop that it's had from the past 2 weeks, it's been about 11.25 from its peak at 455. And then you take a look at Bitcoin, you can see that Bitcoin is down 3%, while MSTR is down 11. So it seems like it's been tracking it more to the downside than it has to the upside. It's kind of just been suppressed. On top of that, I do think we could have been front running the move slightly. That's why we saw that quick move to 455 and then the drop off as Bitcoin goes sideways. So I do wonder if we are going to actually trend sideways until we actually meet this upward sloping trend line and then continue up higher. We'll see, of course, but if we get an aggressive move to the upside on Bitcoin, I would imagine MSTR would begin to follow once again. And if we take a look from MSTR's bottom here all the way to its peak, it's ran up around 93%. So we'll take a look at Bitcoin really quick to compare. So MSTR is up about 93%. We're measuring from this one here. And Bitcoin is up about 65%. So MSTR is definitely not even doing 2x at the moment. Like I said, if you have a long-term view on MSTR, this shouldn't really bother you too much. You should just be accumulating throughout this entire cycle and throughout the entire next cycle. If you're planning on selling then it really doesn't matter what's happening today. This should just be an opportunity. You shouldn't even want it to go up too high. You keep it down, suppressed, so you can accumulate as much as possible. So depending on your time horizon and what your game plan is, you have to shift your mindset to have a more positive outlook if you believe in the strategy that MSTR has going for it. When we take a look here on the weekly SMA, it is starting to climb up little by little on the weekly, on the 20 moving average. Here on the daily, we actually retested off of it. We got a strong bounce, which was a nice sign. And then we actually ended up closing underneath this 20-day SMA So now that's opening the possibilities of us retesting it, potentially finding rejection, and maybe making it to the 50. Of course, that doesn't have to happen, but it increases the odds of it happening now, as we will have the 20-day SMA as the level of resistance that could push price down to that 50-day SMA. And that kind of lines up with what I was talking about on one of my posts, where I was saying if we break 413, then that's going to increase our odds of us touching around 400, around this region. I was doing it based off of this wick here, and then it gives you a clean move on the left-hand side in terms of price action to that next level. So that's kind of where I could potentially see things, unless, of course, we turn around. That's always possible. This can turn back into a nice green engulfing candle. Of course, nothing's 100% certain in the market. We want things to be certain, but nothing is 100% ever. But this is a level that we could potentially find that bounce off of to the downside before maybe rejecting off of this level and maybe pushing back up. And like I said, we can always just flip right back above and continue to move higher. Hopefully we do. That would be nice to see a V-shaped recovery. I would love to see an inverse head and shoulders. We already have a left shoulder being formed here. So I could see us also doing something like this. We have a left shoulder. This turns into a V-shaped recovery. So that gives us the head. Then we come back to retest. We get a bounce. And that would be our right shoulder. And then that would be a bullish sign, if that makes any sense. So it would pretty much be a repeat of this move, but flipped over on this side. So it'd be a push up, push back down for a retest, and then continuing higher. We'll see, of course, but those are the kind of things that I can see playing out. But I would be watching for that 400 level if we continue to see some weakness on Bitcoin and MSTR, especially early in the trading day. Global liquidity continues to rise higher, as you can see. The overall trend is still incredibly bullish. So I still think we have higher to go. How much higher is the question? You can see that we are getting a pretty steep drop, but it looks like the drop is kind of trending sideways and almost increasing a little bit. So maybe the trend can start to ramp back up, and we can see global liquidity start to break fresh highs, which means an extended move for Bitcoin, which means more opportunities for MSTR to increase in value. When we look here at Bitcoin on the weekly, we look pretty good, kind of just chopping sideways. It is looking incredibly bullish. We've been holding this level pretty strong at around the 115 to 116 level at the bottom, and we got rejected, of course, at the 123 mark. But we have this key level of resistance at around 119. That also coincides with this upward sloping trend line. So we are looking pretty good, though. Like I said, we got a nice little wick off the bottom here, but we still closed underneath this upward sloping trend line. So ideally, we want to get a close tomorrow back above and continue fighting to push up higher. This candle was looking pretty promising, but then we ended up closing back inside, and now we'll see what happens overnight and throughout the next trading day. It is still a nice bull flag being formed, so we'll wait to see if it ends up being invalidated by falling through, or if it ends up breaking out, retesting off of that key trend line, and hopefully getting that nice move up. We've seen the measured moves already for the bull flags or bull pennant, and it is taking us to around 128 to about 130, depending on where you draw it at. So if we take it from there to this move here, potentially takes us to that midline around 128, which we've already been speaking of prior, saying that we have seen resistance at that level before. So it would be no surprise if we saw resistance once again once we reach that level. We've seen resistance here, here. So four times already. So I would imagine if we do touch it on the 5th time, we would get rejected again. We could always push past it and wick back down, or Of course, the most bullish scenario would be closing back above it, holding it, retesting, and pushing higher. This midline runs back all the way over here. So it's been a key level of support and resistance for an extended period. As you can see, resistance multiple times, acting as support multiple times. But it's acted as resistance more than has as support, because usually once you get above this zone, the upper half of this channel is usually that euphoria phase. As you can see, they don't really last too long. So when you look here, you can see this is only 4 months of pushing up. So from breaking this line, the midline, to the top was only 4 months, and breaking this top or this line to the top was 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. And then of course you have your moments where you trend sideways and downward, and then you fall back underneath, and it's kind of the same thing. So that also takes me back to my other point where I see the two scenarios playing out. Bullish scenario is making it to the top of this channel, and the more bearish scenario is pretty much finding some kind of rejection somewhere in this middle area, finding some kind of resistance where we push up a little bit higher into this zone, get rejected back to the bottom of the zone, and then maybe in the following cycle we actually make it to the top of the channel, because I believe this move is a drawn out version of this move. Now, one thing that we have seen in the past is Bitcoin rallying during pauses. So we will see if that continues. You can see that we have a pretty decent rally during a pause here. Pretty decent move here. We're having one right now that's been pretty decent so far. After that drop, after the initial drop, we've been rallying pretty solid. And then we had a pretty good one over here in this area. So historically, Bitcoin has rallied during these pause phases that the Fed have been holding. And we've been holding rates for an extended period now. So let's see if Bitcoin can continue to rally and we can continue to have history repeat, or rhyme at least, like we've seen prior. And hopefully that takes us to those targets that we're looking for. We'll see if we can get that euphoric phase where we can actually touch the top of this channel, or if we end up stopping somewhere here at this midline and getting rejected until the next cycle. So from our April bottom on Bitcoin, this 4-month period, Bitcoin has gone up 63%. MSTX has gone up 200%. So previously, MSTX would have done a lot more than this. As you can see here, we'll kind of compare. So this time period, September bottom to November peak, you can see MSTX did 1,300% and Bitcoin did, so it depends. If you take it to this November candle here is 92. If you take it up here, was 100%. So it did essentially like 13 times what Bitcoin did. And now Bitcoin went up 60% and MSTX went up 200%. So as you can see, we're not doing what we did in that initial move over here. So hopefully MSTX can start to perform, but of course we need MSTR to really start to outperform. And that also takes us to MSTR divided by IBIT. As you can see, we were kind of trending pretty well up this trend line, showing the outperformance. It was doing pretty well. After this drop, we started making a nice little move, but we did speak about this a while ago, or a couple weeks back, saying this could potentially be a bear flag and a measured move would take us down lower. Well, we were saying it off of this here, off of that candle, but it could be playing off of this candle, which would also kind of make sense, which would mean that Bitcoin's going to outperform MSTR more if this were to play out. That's not guaranteed, of course. I'm just giving you what the TA is showing. And then if we pull a fib, we bounced right off the 618. So the golden zone, like I said, it's always a magnet. This is a continuation of a bear trend right now. So this is a bearish pull. So as you push up to this level, it's going to increase the odds of you getting rejected, which it did. And now we're sitting underneath the 236, which is showing an increase in bearish momentum to the downside. And we did lose this trend line, but there could be a possibility that we actually come to retest this trend line before continuing that move down. So there might be some kind of move higher on MSTR divided by IBIT, hopefully, to at least retest this line to see if we actually want to break back above it, or if we're going to hold this and continue the trend down. Hopefully we break back above, hold, and continue the move higher. Hopefully this is just a small deviation, because we have been holding it pretty well all the way since February 24th. It does seem like MSTR tends to come back to its 8 EMA on the weekly for a retest. So maybe that's all that's happening. As you can see, we spend a lot of time, even when we deviate temporarily to the upside, we always come back to it. We'll see if that's all that happens. And that would kind of line up with the idea of breaking that 413 or 412 level and making it down to 400, because that's exactly where the 8 EMA is sitting at, around 401. So we'll see if that's where we actually get our bounce, and hopefully we can turn this thing around. But we still have a lot of confluence pointing towards the upside. If we're being honest, we have this downward sloping trend line that's going to act as support. You have this golden zone. You have the smaller golden zone when you look at the daily, that we're sitting at the 0.5 of the 618, and we have this upward sloping channel, which is the key level that has been holding all the way from October 2023. Overall, TA still remains pretty bullish. I still remain pretty bullish overall. I know it's tough, especially when you see Bitcoin moving sideways and MSTR is dropping. But if you believe in what they're doing and you keep your head down for this cycle and the following cycle DCAing in, you should be okay. Not financial advice, of course. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing on these videos. I always appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.